In a recent update, TDS rebalanced a bunch of towers, one of them being the Toxic Gunner. This tower received a massive buff, making it potentially one of the most powerful crowd control options in the game. In this video, I'll be showcasing all the stat changes, values, and uses of this tower, then give my personal ranking of how good it is. So hit that like button and subscribe, and let's get started. Its placement cost was reduced from 675 to 525 cash, meaning you can now get it on the first wave. It attacks in bursts, much like the soldier, until it reaches max level where it shoots continuously. It used to have to reach level 2 to begin poisoning enemies, but it now does that from level 0. After level 2, it also applies a slowness effect with each bullet. Before I get into all the stats, I just want to say I'm not 100% confident everything is fully accurate, as some stats are not shown in game, and different sources told me different stats. Hopefully by the time this video is posted, the wiki has been updated and should have all the right info. But things in this video should be right. Anyways, for every level, the poison tick rate has been doubled from 0.5 to 1. At level 0, its fire rate decreased from 0.12 to 0.1, its cooldown increased from 1 to 1.2, its burst decreased from 6 to 4, its poison damage increased from 0 to 1, its poison length increased from 0 to 6, and its DPS went from 3.39 to 3.58. At level 1, its total cost decreased from 875 to 725 cash, its cooldown increased from 0.5 to 0.6, its poison damage increased from 0 to 1, its poison length increased from 0 to 6, and its DPS went from 4.73 to 5.1. At level 2, its total cost decreased from 1,625 to 1,525 cash, its burst increased from 6 to 8, its poison damage increased from 2 to 4, its slowness per hit increased from 10% to 20%, and its DPS went from 8.79 to 9.26. At level 3, its total cost decreased from 4,625 to 4,525 cash, and its fire rate decreased from 0.1 to 0.085, its damage increased from 2 to 3, its burst increased from 10 to 20, its poison damage increased from 3 to 4, its slowness per hit increased from 10% to 20%, its defense melting per tick increased from 1 to 3, and its DPS went from 18.66 to 28.8. Finally, at level 4, its total cost increased from 13,875 to 18,525 cash, and its fire rate decreased from 0.1 to 0.085, its damage increased from 4 to 7, its poison damage increased from 5 to 10, its slowness per hit increased from 10% to 30%, its defense melting per tick increased from 1 to 3, and its DPS went from 47.05 to 92.5. Alright, so there are quite a few changes here, so let's just start by looking at how good it is in the early game now that we can place it on the first wave. If you set it to strongest targeting so that it spreads out the poison effect, it is able to defend up until wave 4, only leaking a couple of low health quicks. For comparison, 2 golden scouts can only make it to wave 5 on follow mode for 600 cash, so getting to wave 4 for only 525 cash is great. It also transitions really well into the mid game, with level 2 and 3 having fantastic value and being pretty affordable. They can deal some serious damage to crowds, and level 3 is able to cook fallen squires by itself. But just how much damage can this tower deal? Well, let's take a look at its max level. Its single target DPS, when accounting for poison, is 92.5. That gives it a value of 4.99, which is kinda mid. However, this tower isn't meant to be used against singular enemies. It's meant to be used against large crowds of enemies. If we set it to random targeting, due to its crazy high fire rate, it can pretty much apply poison to every single enemy within its range. And considering the poison lasts for 6 seconds, you can have a crazy amount of enemies being damaged at once. You can expect at least 10 enemies at all times to be affected by the poison. The poison at max level deals 10 DPS, so that's an extra 100 DPS. Adding that to its base DPS, we get a total of 182.5. That will give it a value of 9.85, which is really good. And keep in mind, 10 enemies is still a pretty low estimate. In this screenshot I took from a random wave on follow mode, there are at least 20 enemies poisoned, and there exist much denser waves in this. 20 enemies will give it a DPS of 282.5 or value of 15.25. So this tower can absolutely cook crowds. And remember, it doesn't just deal a lot of damage, it also slows enemies down. It can stack slowness up to 30%, and it applies the maximum slowness in one hit at max level. An extra 30% slowness is insane. You're giving your towers 30% more time to attack enemies, meaning they can deal 30% more damage. You can basically think of this as a 30% DPS buff for all towers nearby. Of course, that's a bit of an exaggeration since not every enemy is affected by the slow, but you get my point. The fact that this is an addition to crazy high crowd control is what makes this tower so good. It's an amazing support and crowd control option, but it does have some disadvantages. First of all, it does not have any hidden detection, so you'll have to get another tower to deal with them. In fact, its coverage is pretty bad, with its only extra detection being lead. But most importantly, you cannot stack the poison effect. So, much like the Pyromancer, you do not benefit from spamming this tower. It already has a high enough fire rate to poison every enemy, so you only really need to get one. This does save on placement limit, but it also means you're not actually going to get that much DPS out of this tower. In comparison, comparison, the mortar can supply a ton of damage because each mortar is just as beneficial. Therefore, I wouldn't recommend relying on the Toxic Gunner as your sole form of crowd control, but that doesn't mean it isn't good. Pyromancer has the same issue, yet the Golden Pyromancer is one of the best crowd control towers in the game. Thanks to the Toxic Gunner's defense melting, slowdown, and great value, I'd say it'll always be a helpful and valuable asset to your loadout. Especially since the poison slowdown is a completely separate effect from chill, it'll still be just as beneficial even if your teammates decided to bring their own support. I would say, however, that the Electroshocker does seem like an objectively better version of this tower. It fully stuns enemies, deals more consistently higher DPS, and their damage can stack, so you can fully take advantage of all your Electroshockers. The only advantage the Toxic Gunner has is the fact that it can attack far more enemies while the Electroshocker can only hit 8 at a time, and the fact that the Toxic Gunner could do pretty well in the early game gives it another advantage. It's a very versatile tower. I'm gonna rank the Toxic Gunner as a solid A tier. I definitely think it has the potential to be a high A tier, but the fact that you can't stack its poison does hold it back quite a lot, but everything else it offers is amazing, and if anyone in your squad brings this tower, it will guaranteed make your game a lot easier. Anyways, that's it for this video. Let me know in the comments below how you feel about this rebalance and whether or not you agree with my ranking. And if you enjoyed, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe to join the Blue Head Mafia. Also, if you want to talk to me, consider checking out my Discord. We got some pretty cool features, like a custom party finder bot that will automatically pair you up with other people who are trying to do the same strategy. There's a link to the server pinned in the comments. And finally, I want to give a huge shout out to these channel members for supporting my content. If you want to add me as a friend on Roblox or get early access to some of my videos, consider becoming a channel member. It helps me out a lot and I really appreciate it. Anyways, that's it for this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one.